justice.
Like the first day of class with new seat assignments, we have new name tags with the correct district numbers.
Oh, that's what was.
So that's why there's this makes no change.
I'm so
Some,
confused.
I'm moving a little bit.
I'm confused.
Just want to take a moment. The change is hard, so. This is the Metropolitan Council meeting, July 26th, 2023. This is Charlie Selly, Chair. Welcome. I'm called this meeting to order and welcome everyone. I am first looking at the agenda where we have many business items and looking forward to a presentation on our regional parks policy plan. But if there's no objection, I will assume the agenda is approved. And then we're on to the minutes from our council meeting on July 12th that were sent out in advance. Are there any corrections, deletions? And if not, is there a motion and a second to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. On to the public invitation for interested persons to address the council on items that are not on the agenda. And then reviewing the sign-up sheet, there is no interest to the persons to address the council. So we'll move on to the consent of business items. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any item you want to remove and talk about? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda business items are approved. On to the standing committees. There are reports from the Community Development Committee on the consent agenda. But the Environment Committee, what do we have? Here we are, Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Business item 2023-153 requests that the Metropolitan Council accepts the 2023 Private Property Inflow and Infiltration Task Force Report, Attachment A, and authorizes Environmental Services to implement the recommendations of the report for the Private Property Inflow and Infiltration Grant Programs. The intent of the task force was to provide recommendations to Environmental Services to design a grant program to help private property owners with infiltration and inflow mitigation. Private property I&I is the next big challenge to reduce I&I in the system and extend the life and maintain capacity in the wastewater conveyance and treatment systems. The task force met 4 times in 2023 and concurred with the findings of the report, recommending that ES create a grant program for private property I&I mitigation with the following structure: eligibility, grant amount, eligible work, and lateral televising and cleaning costs for applicants that meet the equity need of the participating municipality. Therefore, Mr. Chair and members of the council, I move that the Metropolitan Council accepts the 2023 Private Property Inflow and Infiltration Task Force Report and authorizes ES to implement the recommendations of the report for the Private Property Inflow and Infiltration Grant Program.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Business item 2023-157 requests that the Metropolitan Council adopts the list of wastewater rates and charges to be effective January 1st, 2024. On May 9th, 2023, staff presented information to the Environment Committee on the 2024 preliminary budget and rates, and on May 25th and June 8th, this information was shared with community customers at 2 customer webinars. 57 customer representatives attended the meetings. The revenue proposed to be raised through the regional wastewater charge in 2024 is a 6.8% increase from 2023. The increase and other rate changes comply with council policy and should enable MCES to meet wastewater regulatory requirements, implement MCES infrastructure rehabilitation and repair needs, and provide wastewater capacity for growth. Wastewater service rates for 2024 need to be set well in advance to allow communities and businesses time to plan their budgets and rates. Therefore, Mr. Chair and members of the council, I move that the Metropolitan Council Regional Administrator adopts the wastewater rates and charges outlined in business item 2023-157 to be effective January 1st, 2024.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion is adopted. On to the Management Committee. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be addressing item 2023-167. It is the same week item. We had that in this item in management today, and it's regarding council property insurance renewal. This business item seeks council authorization to bind coverage of its property insurance effective August 1st of 2023 to August 1st of 2024 in an amount not to exceed $4.3 million. This insurance provides coverage for damage to physical property as well as expenses incurred to continue operations after a loss. Last year, the council switched insurance companies and partnered with FM Global. For this year's renewal, staff worked with the council's insurance broker to benchmark FM Global's quote against the industry, not only comparing the rate but also the coverage. FM Global's rate was not only very competitive, but continued to provide the appropriate coverage for the council's risks. Therefore, the recommendation is to renew the insurance with FM Global. With that, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize binding coverage of its property insurance effective August 1st, 2023 to August 1st, 2024 in an amount not to exceed $4.3 million.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. On to the Transportation Committee. Councilmember Barb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2023-105 is for the Metropolitan Council to authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute a change order for contract 17P000 with APJV for work related to the traction power substation foundation design modification, and also to have council authorize an additional 7.48% to the current 10% cumulative change authority. During APJV's final phase of the TPSS design, it was discovered that the capacity of the manholes were inadequate to handle the required cabling and conduits. It was determined that modifying the TPSS foundation design to include full basements acting as cable vaults would be the most economical solution. This change order will modify the foundation design at 18 of the 19 substations. The increase of 7.48% in the cumulative change order authority incorporates the TPSS foundation change order and allows adequate authority for upcoming change orders with APJV. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator through the Greenland Extension Council's authorized representative to negotiate and execute a change order for contract 17P000 with Aldred Parsons, a joint venture in the amount not to exceed $4,524,243.46 for work related to the traction power substation foundation design modification, and that the council authorize an additional 7.48% or $4.5 million to the current 10%, $19.4 million cumulative change authority for contract 17P000 with APJV, resulting in 17.8% or $34 million cumulative change order authority.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, council members, business item 2023-137 is for the Metropolitan Council to authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute the Phase 2 environmental site assessment contract for the Metro Blue Line Light Rail extension. Phase 1 ESA and Phase 2 ESA is required to be completed as part of the environmental process. Phase 1 ESA was completed in the fall and winter of 2022. The council needs to contract for Phase 2 ESA Environmental Services to continue advancing the environmental effort for the project. The consultant and associated subcontractors will provide services including drilling and trenching services, soil and groundwater sampling, sample analysis, response action plan for contaminated material management, and draft and final report for the Phase 2 ESA analysis. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to negotiate and execute the Phase 2 Environmental Site Assessment Contract 22P366 with Braun Intertech for consultant services for the Metro Blue Line Light Rail Extension Project in an amount not to exceed $660,504.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2023-149 is regarding the approval of the University of Minnesota Universal Metro Pass. Metro Transit is partnering with the University of Minnesota to offer a staff and faculty pass program. This program will provide an unlimited ride transit pass to all eligible employees at the university. Pricing is based on each school's previous participation in the Metro Pass program, capped at an annual dollar value to alleviate budgeting concerns. The initial agreement will offer a 2-year term with 1-year optional extension and will provide critical information on pricing and ridership in future versions of this program. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute a 2-year agreement with the University of Minnesota for the Universal Metro Pass for staff and faculty for the period of August 1st, 2023 through July 31st, 2025, with an option to extend up to 1 additional year from August 1st, 2025 through July 31st, 2026.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Wendy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question. We've had people raise questions before on whether we have a standard price for these things or if it gets negotiated with each one. Which is it? Because, I mean, it'd be nice to think that we charge everybody the same rather than giving special deals to some.
We may ask Ed Petrie to join us and answer that question.
Good afternoon, Chair, Committee members. Ed Petrie, Director of Finance, Metro Transit. Very good question. Generally, our products are all standardized pricing. This is a new product for us. It's a universal pass with the staff and faculty. So what we've done with this, we've established or tried to establish a pass price based upon their historical ridership. As Chair Barber mentioned, we're pricing this product right now with just a 2-year agreement because one of the things we're going to be doing with the University of Minnesota is watching very closely how many rides, what type of rides they're using, express rides, local rides, whatever the case would be, to give us an idea how to price this product going forward.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a comment on this project or program and some other ones. This was a really great success, I think. It got a lot of people introduced to transit, better access. I was just looking that the University of Minnesota employees and faculty took 176,000 rides using MetroPass in 2022, which is extraordinary for a new program. So it's a very good one.
How many more individuals does this mean with faculty and staff?
Chair, committee members, there will be about approximately 18,000 staff and faculty that are eligible to participate.
Right. Excellent.
So we're excited.
Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Do we have this relationship with other colleges yet, like, for example, St. Thomas or Concordia? Or if we don't and they want to engage with us, how would that work?
I'm going to defer
Chair-
to Ed, because yes, but you
Yeah,
can
yeah,
answer.
the answer, Chair, committee members, Ed Petrie once again. Yeah, we do have this, we do have similar types of arrangements like with St. Thomas, Minneapolis Public Schools, some of the other school systems. That's correct. But this is one of the first times that we're taking it though, so it's available to all staff and faculty. So it's kind of a twist on our normal product that we have.
Any other discussion? I'm excited about this.
Yes.
Honestly, this is a great step, and I've talked to the university officials about it, and they're excited. So I think this really helps them, and great for us to get our ridership going.
And Chair, committee members, I totally agree with you. Last year, we actually brought the UPass forward at the University of Minnesota, made it a universal UPass available to all students. That was the first time we did that. Now we're bringing forward the staff and faculty pass at the University of Minnesota. So we have 2 trials, if you will, going on right now.
Great. Well, hearing no more discussion, we can vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Ed. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2023-161, same week, is regarding amendment to the Metro Transit Master Partnership Contract with MnDOT. The master partnership contract with Metro Transit permits the parties to issue work orders in support of Metro Transit capital projects and activities. Pursuant to council business items, item 2023-132, part of the F-Line project, Metro Transit will provide MnDOT preliminary design services for improvements to Trunk Highway 65 in an amount of approximately $2.4 million. Completing the Trunk Highway 65 preliminary design work under the F-Line design contract benefits both Metro Transit and MnDOT by streamlining resolution of design issues within the F-Line corridor, allowing for a concurrent design of complementary roadway and BRT improvements. MnDOT would like to increase the cumulative limit of the total compensation to be paid by MnDOT to the council from $5,000 to $5 million to allow for the preliminary design services and for future work orders. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute Amendment 1 to the Master Partnership Contract 21I003 with the Minnesota Department of Transportation to allow the council to receive up to $5 million from MnDOT for various professional and technical services performed for Metro Transit capital projects.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussions, questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion is passed. Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Almost done, and my voice is still holding out. All right, Mr. Chair, council members, business item number 2023-171 is the same week item regarding the approval of a contract amendment to the equity evaluation of regional transportation investment study. The project equity evaluation of regional transportation investment study is a project listed in the 2040 Transportation Policy Plan and identified in the annual UPWP, which the council approves, to be conducted beginning in mid-22, concluding in June 2024. In 2022, the council awarded special equity initiative funds to the project in an amount of $420,000. The project went out for competitive procurement, and a project team consisting of Bolton and Mink, the Center for Economic Inclusion, and Bellwether Incorporated as the DBE firm was selected. The DBE percentage is at 29% and exceeded the goal established for the project. The purpose of the project is to conduct an equity evaluation of the design-making processes used for identifying and selecting major transportation projects within the region and to develop recommendations for changes to make the processes and resulting distribution of benefits more equitable. The project has formed an equity policy group consisting of 16 community members and 2 ex officio members to direct the evaluation work and develop recommendations. Members are compensated for their participation in this group. In the work to date, it has been clear that the original project budget was significantly underscoped in terms of needed effort and cost to complete the project. In particular, additional effort is needed to provide the consultant staff support, communication, and project interaction with the equity policy group and complete the full 15 meetings of this group. Additional effort is also being added at the end of the project for the co-chairs and consultant to participate in presentation of the project recommendations. This is important equity work for the council, and I look forward to recommending that we make our regional transportation investment processes more equitable in decision-making and benefits. Therefore, Mr. Chair, I move that the Metropolitan Council authorize the regional administrator to execute an amendment increasing the contract amount for 21P272 with Bolton and Mink by $308,500 to conduct the equity evaluation of regional transportation investment, resulting in a project total not to exceed $718,000 and $500,000 or $718,500. There, done. Sorry, stumbled over the last one.
That's okay. You
718,500.
got there.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. This is a great project, and I see Ms. Venowitz, who's here to answer questions or explain it, but go ahead.
Mr. Chair. I just have a question. I'm voting for it, but there's a couple concerns I have. One is, in the text, is that the original consulting team significantly underestimated the level of time and effort required for completion of the work. So you've got a crackerjack team, A-plus team, and yet they underestimated the amount of work, and they should have estimated it more tightly. Two is in the sourcing of this, were there other teams that came in at 600,000 or 700,000 or whatever who had that scope of work and could have done it? So it's nothing that has to be answered now. I'm just asking for it to be looked at in the future going forward, because cost is always a factor in providing and selecting a contractor. And having been on the other side of this, knowing that scope is a big issue, that having such a crackerjack team and to say that it was so underscoped for time, especially on engagement, I know engagement is very costly. And when I looked at the original proposal, I could see it was underscoped from the get-go.
Yeah.
And so it was just a little disturbing. So just going forward in the future to look at these and to make sure that we're not looking at 100%, and I know new tasks are added to it, but it really is that project management and that engagement, which is so costly, that we need to do a better job on our other projects going forward to really scope them out at the front end correctly. And I'm just worried about the procurement side of it and the people who came in with maybe higher budgets and were removed because they had bigger budgets.
Yeah, point well taken. I don't know.
That's all.
if,
I just.
Amy, do you have any comments?
Mr. Chair and members, Amy Venowitz with MTS, and also the project manager for this. So one of the things I would say about this project is it really is a pilot project. We haven't used this approach before, where we have what we're calling an equity policy group, community members, and then regular meetings and engaging with the community members. Just to be clear, we're not doing what I would term general engagement, like we're not out in the community doing widespread engagement. The engagement we're doing is very specific to the members of what we're calling the EPG. And so that approach of using this community group, 16 members, 2 ex officio, is new. And we knew what we would have to pay them to participate, and we knew how many meetings we thought it would take. And I'd say what we have learned is the behind-the-scenes work to prep and to get materials and information and work with our co-chairs and really assure ourselves that when we go into that meeting with the EPG, that we're presenting something understandable, that we've kind of boiled down the questions, that we're really clear where we need their feedback. That behind-the-scenes work is just a lot more intense and complicated than we thought it would be. And there's a lot of lessons learned in that I think others and other efforts within the council that I would really like to engage with people and talk about running a committee of that sort. It really is time intensive. And in terms of other bidders, typically when we do planning projects, they're what we would call best value. So we oftentimes look at the team, the qualifications, the experience. And the other thing about planning projects is oftentimes the effort could be huge, or you could tell them just scope it down to this. And so we typically put an estimate in our RFPs. So we give the consultants an idea of this is what we think the level of effort should be in the annual work program. We also put an estimated budget. we did that with this project. So when we originally went out, we had an estimated budget in the range of 400 and something thousand. And what we typically, if we have underestimated it, we oftentimes expect the consultants to tell us that. Like they either won't bid or they'll come in with a really high bid. In this case, that did not happen. We had 6 proposers, excellent teams, really kind of unique teams and unique approaches to the project, and they all came in right at the 400. It was within dollars. So the budget proposal was not the determining factor. And what I thought this at the time, the teams wanted the work because it was unique and because we were doing kind of this unique approach. We had consultants who were excited about the project. They really, really wanted to do the work. We had interesting combinations of, in this instance, Center for Economic Inclusion, which is a nonprofit group that works in equity, combined with a transportation technical consultant. And almost all of the teams had some kind of interesting combination like that. So I'm guessing instead of telling us that they couldn't do it for what we said was the estimate because they wanted to do it, they all bid it at that. And now that we're in the midst of this project, it's very, very clear that the level of effort is just, much, much more than we anticipated it would be. And I also think there is a complicating factor when you have a nonprofit who is not a typical consultant, working with a consultant and how they approach projects and how they form their team. And that was that a lot of lessons learned in that piece of it too. So it's been exciting, but not quite what we expected.
Okay. Any follow-up questions?
Just a follow-up, thank you so much for the information. Absolutely important work. Maybe there's a lesson learned that the MEC Council doesn't set the budget, because I think you would have gotten, maybe with the experts that you have on these teams, they know what it was going to take to do this, I imagine. And when you set the price, I think they come in with that price because they want the work. And somehow, maybe there's a lesson learned to somehow leave it open, somehow get more information and get that feedback or find a way to talk about it. But absolutely critical work. It's just kind of on the front end, plan better.
Councilmember, Chambliss.
Yeah, it's the heat.
Yeah, it is it's my
Yeah.
cold.
I was trying to say Chardonnay.
Well, thank you for asking that question. It was a really good question and really made me think and about how we do contracts. As an ex officio member of this group, it's been a very well-led initiative. Very well led in terms of understanding and engaging and connecting with the participants, working, the different consultants working with each other. The background work that was done was so seamless. They came in prepared, had their questions, knew exactly how to execute. So you could tell that there was a lot of preparation done before they arrived because the work was so efficient and effective. The selection of the participants was also very good, with community members participating that were very versed in equity and very connected to their communities. So, my impression is it's very quality work. And I'm glad that we're moving forward to make sure that this this project is funded properly.
Great. And was there another comment?
Just a comment,
John,
John.
go ahead.
And at risk of sounding like a broken record too often, I was just wondering is that we do have a community advisory committee that we don't pay, that are 21 members, and I'm not sure, if they were engaged or not, but if we're not going to use them and if we're not going to provide them compensation as we did this advisory. I think we should take a look at going another way. But so often I've looked at this again, and they have not been used. We are now asking for more presentations. And the second part of that is that not all, but a number of advisories in the state are paid the $50 a meeting stipend. And I'm not sure if they're eligible or if we're not eligible to create such an entity here. But that's very common across the state. So something to look at.
Yeah. Councilmember Pepper.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Honestly, this is part of the reason, the consideration of why part of this was built at the outside consulting firm was to be able to compensate the advisory committee because we don't have a structure to be able to do that. We've talked about it often, but there's some legal constraints that we have. And this was a way that we could set up this group that was doing this really important work. And I do agree it's really important work because transportation investments are big dollar investments. So this is really a good way to kind of guide how we make decisions on those investments. But it was one of the considerations of moving it outside.
Councilmember Johnson.
I just appreciate this discussion. I appreciate the item being raised. I think that, again, we do our very best with what we have, and I think our team does a great job at estimating. But again, when you see change orders coming through, and especially with this council, and just making sure that we're getting the information out there as best we can, so that we don't have big change orders or surprises on the backside. But the work is great. We'll continue to move forward. But I appreciate just the extra dialogue. We don't always get deeper into some of these things and ask the questions. So thank you for raising them.
Great comments and conversation. Anyone else? Oh, all right. We have a motion and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. Well, we're on to our information items, and presenting on both is Emmett. Going to lead us off? Emmett Mullen.
Good afternoon, Chair and council members. I'm Emmett Mullen. I'm the Regional Parks Manager in the Community Development Division. And I am here today to speak to you about the Regional Development Guide and the Regional Parks Policy Plan update. And my last slide is sort of, not to give you the spoiler, but it's around what's your advice or what are your questions. My presentation is about 10 minutes long, maybe slightly longer than that. But so the early slides in this too, I just want to say, are probably pretty familiar to you, partly because they're from you. But I did think it was important grounding. So we want to. Today, I'm hoping to update you on our collective progress on the Regional Parks Policy Plan as it sits underneath the umbrella of the larger Regional Development Guide. The Parks team is out and doing a lot of related efforts, and we wanted to update you on those. One big push with this process, and at your encouragement, is to better integrate how our council systems work together, including how the Regional Parks and Trails System works with transportation, wastewater, and housing. But we'd like to see the other way around too, how they're working for us. So here we go. Slide 1 is, again, this is a familiar slide to you, but the idea is that this graphic describes the basic framework of the Regional Development Guide and how it serves as our umbrella over the council's policy and system plans. You've set that strategic front end of this planning process, the values and vision, and now the 5 cross-cutting goals, and how it frames the larger effort and then steps down into our policy plan. So we think that it's a system that can work. So again, very familiar. The values that you have identified are values that really work well with our regional parks and trails system, are equity, leadership, accountability, and stewardship. So continuing to roll. Here is the most recent vision examples, that's what I'll call them. I saw Mike Larson's presentation at your June Committee of the Whole meeting, and that's where we got these from, and then the 5 goals. But there was significant discussion around this draft and how it evolved, and we know that it probably will continue to evolve. So we are using this as sort of our baseline or our grounding. Now I'm on to the Regional Parks Policy Plan timeline. It very much fits with that broader regional development guide effort. At the top are 4, big phases of this project. We're squarely in the planning phase right now, which will run through the end of this year. We'll be getting into the execution phase. When by execution, we mean drafting actual policy language. And we will be getting into that by the end of the year, because by March of 2024, we hope to have a 60% draft. That's what we're calling it. So pretty good, but still in need of a lot of refinement. And then by August, we're hoping to have what we're calling the 90% plan that we then take forward through the council with the other policies, plans, and the broader regional development guide. So that's our timeline. This slide is now the first slide as we drop into the regional parks, policy plan work groups. This is how we're proposing to move work forward in our policy plan. And they're very much organized around work groups that are made up of council staff and regional park implementing agency staff. The first not the first 4, excuse me, we've initiated 4 of these work groups, and the first is around community, stakeholder, and public engagement. That was like the very first one we developed. Next, the regional parks and trails system. It's an update. We're not just calling it the regional park system anymore, but the vision, mission, and values. That's something that we're looking to create within the umbrella of the regional development guide vision and values, but actually a strategic framing for the parks policy plan too. And then the 5th one on here is parks and trails plan requirements. That's sort of our bread and butter into the details, but that's another work group that we have initiated. And finally, system plan considerations, number 6 on that list. The other 3 that we are going to launch later this fall is the 3rd one, strategic sustainable funding. The sustainable funding one is sort of the hot ticket. That's what everyone wants to talk about. How are we going to afford the system that we have and even build one for the future? The second work group that is yet to be initiated is the recreation activities and facilities. This is, like I always like to think of our eligible activities. We've got this really kind of old school list, old school not in a good way, and that really needs some rethinking and updating. And then finally, the last one, number 7 on the list, is the regional trails and the regional bicycle transportation network, something you probably know a lot about. Or when these things were conceived, we were sort of thinking of the regional trail system as a recreational focus, and then the regional bicycle transportation network is our commuting. Well, I think what we're learning is that we can't do it all, and we really can't separate those 2 things, and we don't have enough money to do both of them. So we're really, while it's not a pure overlap, there's just a tremendous overlap, and we're looking to explore that more with this work group. I want to talk about the community, stakeholder, and public engagement now. This work group has already been initiated, and I want to make the point that we are already out in community working on the parks policy plan. As I've said we're, trying to lead a public engagement process on this planning effort with an open, transparent process that really meets stakeholders where they are. We've prioritized underserved communities who have not been effectively engaged in the past. And the photo from this slide is actually a health and wellness fair that we attended in Scott County at Cleary Park. We're trying to create avenues into our plan that, like we used to go, so what do you think about this amazing boundary adjustment proposal? Like, it's just, we would get way into it and people would be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So now we're trying to back it up a little bit, and like this board, which you can kind of read, says, parks are healing, family, playful, our heart. And we're asking people to sort of talk about what is really important and what do they want to see moving forward. So that's so that's that. Oh, then some key takeaways that we're already learning is that our agencies are super interested in the mission, vision, and values. We were really worried that they might think that that was either boring or extraneous. And while they haven't been easy conversations, to be candid, people have really engaged on it. I'll get into that in a minute. They wanted to say, keep it short and simple and stop writing so many words, so they really want it short, visual, and they don't want it duplicative of multiple layers. So those are some of the big takeaways. I'll get now into, so where we've been and where we're going. We've been out in our parks, as I said, with our agency partners, hosting policy-focused discussions. They've been going pretty well. Some of the targeted focus groups that we're doing, like we front-end them with a fun activity, and then, so like people get something out of it before we like give them cookies and ask them for their opinions. That has been working really well. One of the key things that we've also heard, and not just from you, but like we have done a ton of outreach and engagement. Our park agency partners have done a lot of engagement. They're doing public engagement. They're doing like equity analysis. And there's a lot of work to harvest from those plans. So we're really looking to draw out those lessons, those learnings, and that advice, and bring it into our planning process. So we're going to be at the Monarch Festival coming up at Nokomis Regional Park, so that's going to be fun. I think that's early September, and we've got a bunch of other things planned. We are conducting a historical cultural study right now, and we're learning a lot through that, and we want to really integrate the lessons and learnings that we're getting from that into this process. A number of our partners within the Division of Community Development are doing engagement too, and what we're finding is, well, you go out and you talk to people about housing, and well, they also want to talk about parks. So like we're super siloed in our thinking sometimes, and that is we recognize that's a problem, maybe the first step, but the idea that we should be doing this more together, and that's something that I think that we're all committed to. I'm really almost done. The regional Parks and Trails Vision, Mission, and Values Work Group. So now I'm reporting out what we've been up to with our agency council work group. We're looking to nest this, whatever we create out of this process, within what you've developed as a regional development guide, vision and values. We know it needs to nest within that organization. We're getting some really good advice there. There's interest in developing a system-wide partnership approach to the vision, mission, and value statement. as well as describing the council role, what we'll do, what we'll bring to the table. I think that we're learning a lot. There's, like, when we talk about the vision statements, where we need to go, a couple have really resonated, a couple concepts like community, connecting community, inspiring health and healing, protecting nature. That was one sort of possibility. Another alternative vision is sort of talking about creating a premier system of connected nature-based parks and trails, fostering healthy people, community, and natural systems. So there's a lot to like there, I think. For our mission, the group really liked words like partnership, which is nice. The idea that we're bigger together than we are independently, support, and then interconnected nature-based system. The values too, there's something that they want to talk about. They want to talk about how we do our work together. And so here's what the group, this is a work in progress, and if I presented this as done, like, the work group would probably be very unhappy with me. So know that this will change, but the vision right now, our working draft is together, growing community connections and inspiring health and healing. So the idea is that that's got to be short. Yeah, we keep going through exceptional outdoor experiences and high-quality natural areas. Pretty good. The mission, a partnership, again, like who we are, what we do, a partnership committed to an interconnected nature-based parks and trails system where everyone belongs. So some people have said, well, that's kind of tacked on at the end. Does that really work? I don't know. We're working on it, but it's pretty good. Finally, some of the values that have emerged, collaboration was one. These were actually, I'm not saying they're easy, but they came quickly. People really believed in collaboration, belonging, stewardship, again, repetitive, but well-being, adaptability, and education. Education both as sort of a strategy and an outcome. That's one thing that people are talking about. So that was kind of quick and probably too wordy, but I'm happy to go back to any of the slides if you have questions. The staff team and I are listening if you have any advice or takeaways.
Thank you, Emmett. And I might just start. So I'm assuming the implementing agencies are very involved. In fact, this is the group you're working with. And the idea is they fit their work in a consolidated basis to fit into our regional vision and plan.
Yep.
And you're just the guy to help make that kind of thing happen. So that's the role of the staff, has really been kind of the intermediaries in these conversations.
Chair and council members, great question. And you're exactly right that we are working hand in hand with our regional park implementing agencies. They are committed to the regional development guide process. They want to be involved. They want to be included, and they also have a lot of ideas that they're bringing to the table. They are, as you folks know, the actual owners and operators of the system. We don't forget that. And we also know that they have elected boards and commissions that have a lot of strong opinions, and so we're thinking a lot about that, and we believe that we're moving forward with them. So, good.
Great. Councilmember Venta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Emmett, and thanks to all of the staff who've been working on this. I want to talk a little bit. I don't have a question. I just have a rambling, pretty unstructured or prepared thought here. But I want to focus on the first two values of collaboration and belonging. And I would like for our 2050 plan to really emphasize those two from the get-go in all of our planning work, whether it be with the regional parks and trails, whether it be with housing, community planning, transportation, waste treatment, whatever, that we model and really promote collaboration and belonging is a part of what our metro region is. I am growing increasingly concerned about the really brick wall siloing of people. There are fights over bike trails, there are fights over transit, there are fights over housing developments, and as we know too well, we are often the last stop or along, well, not the last stop, but a pretty vital stop along the way in the fight. And many times are the punching bag and the excuse that others use saying, well, the Met Council's making us do this, or the Met Council decided this. And I think it's really important for us to do what we can to try to bring differing viewpoints to the table as early as possible in the planning so that people learn to talk to each other about these issues. And I don't want to pretend like I know all the answers or that I even know how to do this, because I can race up the ladder of inference as fast as anybody and get pretty stuck at the top of the ladder of inference. But I think we really need to work at it, because to make this a thriving, vibrant region, we gotta be a community, and we aren't a community if we're all divided in silos. So thanks for letting me say that, and I guess that falls under the advice column, so. My request.
Thank you.
Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes, I just want to comment on the Monarch Festival. I think it's a great event. They've been able to tie the culture of where the monarch comes from in Mexico all the way across here, and then has the bands and the music and the everything. It's just a great event every year, and it's luckily so for the last 5 years or 6 years, the weather's been great, but you can never count on that. But they did a really good job of bringing the culture to the parks and the community at the same time.
Councilmember Pacheco, thanks for saying that. You know, that's just one of the great festivals that happen in the summertime. Like, it's amazing music, food, and actually you can go and do art. You can do so much, and it's a fun place to go. And, you know, old school planning and engagement sort of used to be, we create the event and invite people. And we need to stop doing that because people are too busy and they really need, so going, like, it's so, like the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board invited us in and get to set up our table next to the bus. And it's a really great place for us to learn what people hope for and what they want, so thanks.
Councilmember Johnson.
And just to build on a few things that were said and really appreciate this great work. Super excited about this, the way you presented it. But to the point of your comment, Mr. Chair, about the implementing agencies are really part of this because they need to be. And then to Councilmember Vento, how it really all does start in a place, in a city, in a township, in a community, somewhere, that somebody's backyard, or even if it's not technically theirs, most people think it is because they love it so much or care about it so much. I think that's also something that needs to be woven into everything that we do here at Met Council, recognizing that all of this really begins at that local closest level to somebody's place they live, work, love, whatever it might be. And we're putting the big umbrella structure around, you know, the process by which everybody comes to put the 2050 plan together. But to Councilmember Vento's point, you know, by the time it's up for final approval, and ours is maybe just, you know, rote, because if it meets everything, we say yes. I think acknowledging, you know, our role somehow in being the big picture, sometimes we're the final stop, but it all really starts in somebody's backyard and with our local partners. You know, so, because nothing that we do here would happen if a community didn't want it, you know? So I think that I see that in here, and I think that's why you know, it's something that I resonate with, and I do appreciate you recognizing internal silos. That's a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So early on, Emmett, you talked a little bit about transportation trails versus recreational trails and how they should maybe be the same thing. And I'm a little bit concerned about that because some of our funding is based on visitation and square miles of how much land you have in your system. And those transportation trails can get a lot of people and bump up the numbers in some areas, skewing the funding even more than it already is. So I think that's something important to keep in mind. It's not the job of the regional park system to pay for all of the transportation trails for certain communities at the expense of maybe some other parts of the system. And we have areas in Scott County, in Dakota County, along the Cannon River and stuff, that we're trying to accumulate natural resource land to preserve it into the future for future regional parks, but there's no money to fix it up and do anything with it. And if we're putting that money into transportation trails instead of protecting natural resources, I think we're gonna be missing out on an important facet of the system that nobody else is taking care of. If we don't protect the natural resources, nobody will. So keeping that geographic balance and that mission balance in mind as you're going through this, I think is very important, because we don't want to lose the opportunity for people to access that pristine wilderness along the Cannon River, the Minnesota River, and these other areas that have not been developed and don't currently have access. We own the land, but there might be a gravel parking lot and a vault toilet, or there might not even be that. There might not be any roads or paths or anything to get to that space yet. And we need to focus on not just making it better for the current users and system, but for future areas of the region and protecting them as well.
I'll just thank Councilmember Wolf, great comment, and everything you said that resonates with me, and I may have oversimplified. The regional trail system, there's about 415 miles. The regional bicycle transportation network has, I'm just gonna go with more than 1,000, probably thousands of miles. And regional trails are separated and protected. Like, there's a higher standard of safety with regional trails. And if we want a really high-quality regional bicycle transportation system, which we do, there's no way we could build it, at least in the near term, with that, at that level of standard. So like, there is a real distinction between the two, but I also think that one of the best ways to build regional trails, and I mean this with only love in my heart, is that regional, or that federal funding, the federal transportation funding. Like, that is a big game changer in helping construct important trails throughout our region. So,
And fund long-term capital maintenance.
yeah. Yep.
Councilmember Logan.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks for the presentation. It's really exciting. It's cool to hear your enthusiasm, or the enthusiasm of the participating implementing agencies in this process, and hear it through. So that's pretty cool. And so this is kind of in the advice area, I guess. And one of the things I'm not seeing here, and maybe it is here and I'm just not seeing it, but especially as we look to 2050, but our impacts of climate change, and especially as we're talking about being stewards of the land. And, I see it in the Mike Larson slide.
Yeah.
It says we want to lead on addressing the impacts of climate change. But when you think of the disparate the impacts on different communities, it becomes an equity issue as well, right? And so, and it seems like it would be here, and maybe it's just not something we put in the parks plan, but it seems like it's one of the areas where it could have both the biggest impacts on the parks, but also some bigger role in the mitigation of climate change. So there's that, and then the other piece, and I think I'm going to start asking this more as we as we develop our 2050 design guidelines. But you go through the engagement and the looking forward and things, and since we've adopted a tribal consultation policy, and we actually have 2 tribes now with a metro presence, I'm just wondering what that piece might be. And then, I've always been kind of pushing to extrapolate, just the confines of the policy to the broader tribal communities that call the metro area their home. And I suspect that as we start talking about land and water and things like that, the conversation could take on a slightly different kind of tenor if we're engaging indigenous communities in that conversation.
Chair, Councilmember Lilligren, great comments. Regarding your first one around not seeing climate change, I think my staff team is cheering in the back row because like there is a real interest in strengthening how we talk about climate change and making the more critical connections to that natural systems work and adaptation work. So I think we have a lot of room to improve here. It is on our radar. It's not only on our radar. I mean, we're thinking about it, and we in the regional parks and trails system play a really critical role. Not only because we manage, over 55,000 acres, but because I think we can demonstrate best practices in our regional parks and trails. We can, through our regional trail system, we can provide alternatives to driving. I think that there are a lot of other places that I'm not thinking about right now where we can elevate that work and go deeper too. So we're committed to doing that. The engagement work, we are thinking about tribal communities, and we're worried about wearing out the tribal communities too, because people go to the same groups often, time and again. And so I think there's a lot we can learn from what we've already done, but we have a real interest in having, good conversations with the tribal community. A couple just thoughts. This historical cultural study that we're working on, we are reaching out to Wakantipi. Wakantipi's, currently in the Bruce Vento Nature Sanctuary, or soon to be called, I think, Wakantipi, and I don't remember the other word, but and then and we've actually brought in the lead planner for Indian Mounds Regional Park and sort of the reimagining of that park. And one of the tribal historic preservation officers that they worked with, who works with Wakantipi, came to our Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission. It was not just making this up, it was one of the best meetings we've had just because of the willingness to share perspective on what that park is. I mean, it's a cemetery, like that's what they're talking about. And we're also working on reaching out to communities to talk a little bit in the historical cultural study. And we've contacted some really promising leads in that, and we want to bring stories in that will illustrate future direction, places where we know we need to go. Parks and trails often are next to water bodies, and they're in that transition zone, and that's often the most sacred space, just because that's where there's a lot of biodiversity, and that's where people want to be. And so we're thinking about that. So we're committed to that, and we also probably owe you another conversation too, because one of the things we wrote in our last policy plan was a desire to do some sort of a land acknowledgement, and you were very helpful early on, and you're like, good, that's good. However, it's sort of like the trendy thing to do. I'm paraphrasing you, and we need to think about not just acknowledgement, but what we're actually going to do as a result of that acknowledgement. And like, we've been thinking about that, and we will continue to, and we're not just thinking, but we're saying what else, what are the actions we can do, so.
Mr. Chair, if I may, thanks. I mean, that's really helpful. And wow, it's interesting that you actually heard what I said, which I appreciate a lot. But that, you know, and I think this is an opportunity to do something, right? And so we're looking to 2050, and this is where I think it's kind of interesting and maybe nuanced or something about our engagement policy, you know, our tribal engagement. And you know, that was directed, mandated by the governor, good for him. And I brought this up throughout, is that we have very little actual sovereign tribal land within the metro area, but we have thousands of tribal citizens. And so it might mean that at the Met Council, when we do activities like this, we have to be a little more creative, maybe a little more flexible, maybe get out of the policy itself and figure out ways to engage. And I love that you're engaging with the Walk-On TP group. And then there's because a lot of them are descendants of the people who were first. I mean, that's been deliberate on their part to engage Dakota people. And there's another project, one in Minneapolis on the river, which is called, currently called Friends of the Falls, the Lock and Dam project. It'll soon be renamed with a Dakota name, and they've done the same thing now. They have mostly Dakota people driving that conversation. And if you look at the makeup of the boards of both those groups, you'll see those are some of the people we would want to be engaged. And there's always this kind of dynamic or a bit of a rub between dealing with sovereign tribes, sovereign nations, and then of course people in the city are living, you know, sovereignly on their own land, but they're not sovereign nations. And so we're a government, so there's government to government, but I think it would really benefit the process to put effort into engaging those two groups. Thank you, thanks.
Thank you, great comments. Deb?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add or echo all of what Councilmember Lilligren was just saying. When we did the last update of the transportation policy plan, it was an in-between update. And we did go through, even before our policy was adopted, because within my district lies one of the sovereign nations who not only has a lot to do with transportation, but they build roads. And so to not consult is very insulting. And so we went out and did do that. And I think we have a policy for that, but I think sort of that next level of not only are we consulting, we're not doing it just to check a box, but we're looking to do something to get the feedback, to understand not only the tribal nations within the metro, but all of the tribal population, the people, and really connecting that. I think it's really critical. And I think that's what with this going on the 2050 plan, whichever system plan, the overall plan, it's really the opportunity to really do this and to question it and make sure we're doing it right. I think there's going to be a couple runs at it before we're good at it. But I think that we have to be pretty honest with ourselves how we're doing it. And don't be afraid to go out to talk to the tribal nations or members of the tribal nations of what are we doing wrong? Like, what should we do right? Because we can set an example here.
Great comments, thank you, yes. Councilmember Pinto.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I'm going to ask Emmett to follow up with an email based on this request that I'm going to make. We have a couple of vacancies on impasse I'm correct here, Emmett, District E, which is Met Council Districts 9 and 10, and District H, which is Met Council Districts 15 and 16. If you know of anybody who is a park and trail or trail advocate, please encourage them to apply. We need applicants and we need active people on the commission. They're doing important work, and having two vacancies is a challenge. So, and Emma, if you would be willing to follow up. I just want to make one more point. This request isn't directed to those of you that represent those particular districts, because all of us have friends and contacts all over the place. So if you know of somebody who lives in District D or lives in District H and you think they might be interested, give them a nudge. I'm particularly interested in people of color and indigenous representation on MPOSC. Perhaps I would be happy to make a call to the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council and do some seeking there, and also people with disabilities. We had a great representative from Councilmember Wolf's district who just was a fierce advocate for people with disabilities. He's no longer able to serve on the commission, but we need that voice as well. So whatever you can do to help us, we'd really appreciate. This is another one of those commissions where these folks, you know, they come in at 4 o'clock from all over the metro area. They spend a couple hours, sometimes more than a couple hours, and their contributions are significant and just greatly impact the work that MPOSC does.
You got that.
I got that. I'll follow up with an email, and thank you, Chair and Councilmember Vento, for mentioning that. I also wanted to share one of my problems. There was a recent Metropolitan Council redistricting, and we have 2 amazing commissioners that were once in District C and District D, and they through redistricting, they got combined, and they're brand new, or they're really new commissioners, and they're both really, really good. So we also have a vacancy in District D, which is our Council District 7 and 8. So, but I'll follow up with everyone, and yeah, 3 vacancies, and
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah.
I was also going to kind of come back to something that I'm sure everybody may be aware, that we have budgeted and have a position of a full-time tribal liaison that we are now in the process of posting and recruiting and looking for. So, and I think that's really important in all the work we do, in part just for what I think Robert and Deb, you were saying that we're not just checking a box, that the consultation is a process of understanding both the government-to-government nature, but also the human activity and the history. And so your council has been really helpful there. And we hope to be getting better at celebrating our strengths, not just not getting into trouble. I think this is the better way to think of it. Yeah. Great. Yeah.
Will that liaison serve on behalf of all of our, across all areas of the council? Because I think the point that he made earlier, that, you know, if we keep revisiting, asking for so much from the same leaders over and over again, we're exhausting them. And so to have that expertise and that relationship being built by one point person helps alleviate some of that.
I think that's right. I think we've been, ES has a lot of activities, as we've known, because it's underground and we're building projects, but transportation, you know, why are we duplicating? Yeah, so,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
That's the intention. So we gotta make sure it happens. Okay. Any other questions, thoughts? Councilwoman Vento?
I'm sorry, I wasn't going to say anything more, but got talking about tribal-state relations. The tribal-state relations training program is exceptional, and there are training dates open for this fall for anybody. There's August, September, October, November, there are sessions going on, and if people are interested, just go to just Google State of Minnesota Tribal State Relations, and you can get the information. I don't know, Mr. Chair, what kind of process we have to go through in the council to get authorized to do the training, but to the extent that we can have more of us have that training, I think it would be really great.
Well,
Since you
I'm not quite, yes, I
You're the
will have to
godfather.
approve it, yes. Well, I'll give it very careful consideration. No, I think it's an excellent training, excellent program, really awareness setting, and I highly encourage anyone who hasn't done it to give, and you can talk to a number of us who have attended, both staff and council members. And I know we're steering away from Emmett's, but any more question for Emmett or the parks information plan process? Any other subject that anyone would wish to share? No, this has been a great conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Emma. We're looking forward to hearing more. And anything for the regional administrator?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Nothing to report from me.
No? And our general counsel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will pass.
Well, it's summer, so I think we should get out to it. So anyway, with that, thank you all, and we will see you soon. This meeting is adjourned.